as they approach or turn 60. They can choose to remain professionally active or withdraw from the workplace altogether. They can choose leisure or recreation, or they can choose to give back to the community, be involved, or be an advocate. There are so many choices, more than ever. Are you wondering how to transfer your professional skills and your experience into a fulfilling role after you drop the mask and cease being who other people expect you to be? For women entrepreneurs and executives, the power of listening to our own voice and sharing through advocacy can be especially fulfilling. Ellie Glassford, founder of Glassford Group, joins Executive Encore today to share her insights about protective masks that we wear for decades, the why, and the work involved to put ourselves first in finding fulfillment after 60. Ellie is the founder of Glassford Group and creator of Unlocking Her. A recent post on gender ageism on LinkedIn went viral. At 59, at a pinnacle point of transition in her successful career, Ellie asked herself a critical question. Who are you when you aren't being who other people expect you to be? She couldn't answer it. The resulting journey led her on a path of self-discovery and enlightenment that has clarified exactly how she wants to enter her 7th decade. She realized that her secret is actually her secret sauce. And while masks protected her for years, it's time to drop them all. Now she shares her journey with us. Welcome, Ellie. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm great, but thank you, Patricia, for reaching out. I mean, first of all, it's a little scary when you say, 7th decade. I mean, when someone says, I'm entering my 7th decade, and when I wrote that on a post, it was, what? I mean, I don't feel like I'm going into my 7th decade, and I don't think a lot of women who are going through it do, right? I mean, what you see is so different than what we feel. It's so first of all, thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
Today. And I'll just start by saying I give you full permission to interrupt me at any time because I have a lot to say. And once you find your voice, it's those who know me really well won't be surprised that I have a lot to say. But so by all means, interrupt me at any point.
Thank you for that. I will, as kindly as I can, because I know you will be on a roll and it's all valuable information. But we'll start off with about you sharing your story of self-discovery when you asked that question, because I know a couple of other questions followed up for you. Can you start with when you asked that question of yourself and what insights you had?
Absolutely. So I think it's important to note that, I started very early in my career. I dropped out of university 2 weeks before my final first year exams. Surprise. There's no initials by my name. There's no BA, MBA, anything. And that in itself has always haunted me as I have been compared to others. Well, I just assumed you had whatever it was, whatever degree. But I went very early into what I wanted to do at the time was fashion. And I left at 17 and I went into fashion and, decades upon decades, it just became chasing what I wanted, looked for ways that I could, impact the businesses. And I was always I always wore whatever mask was needed for me to wear. Right? If you need me to be a speaker, I'll be a speaker. You need me to manage people, I'll figure out how, and I'll do that. You show me in a very male-dominated way what leadership looks like, I'm going to emulate that, right? Whatever it takes to kind of get to where you need to go. And, I was always been described as energetic, like high energy, and confident, and yet, inside didn't really feel it. That was a big part of the mask. And so later in life, in my 40s and into my 50s, I started to feel a little bit of an imbalance inside where, I was seeing a movement and that I could be more, use my voice for women. And I could really feel injustices more than I ever felt them before. So to be frank, I started to speak up a little more in the places that I worked, in those I did business with. Did that make some people uncomfortable? Sure, absolutely. But for me, I finally had a seat at the table in my 40s. But when I got a seat at the table, I still had to protect my seat. So it wasn't just about, for me, I wanted to make sure that I would challenge processes and challenge ideas that were made at the table. And at the same time, knew I had to protect where I sat. I mean, I couldn't lose that seat. If I lose that seat, who's gonna voice for women? So
Mm.
last year you asked me how I got on the path of enlightenment, and that just breezed through 50 years. and then I got to, which was a lot longer, seemed a lot longer.
It doesn't seem like that long.
and then I was restructured out of my role last year.
Ah,
I was restructured under business reasons, and I happened to be the only VP in a male group of VPs. I happened to be the oldest member of the entire department, and oh, did it hurt? It
oh.
stung. Why did it sting? Why did it hurt? At the end of the day, today I can look back and say, my God, what a gift. What a gift. It was like I got unwrapped, right? But in the moment, really hard. Couldn't understand in that moment, how is that even possible, right?
Yeah.
Like, how is it possible? Because when you associate yourself and your worth to your role and your title and your influence in that way, when that is stripped away from you, you are forced to look inward, or you go through a really dark time. And I just had enough of the patriarchy, of everything. And so I decided to look inward. And I got to tell you, it was the most uncomfortable thing I've ever done, warts and all, right?
Yeah.
How did I actually, how did I feed into this? How did I allow it to happen? And a lot of it was the mask. And so I took a big, big, big leap and decided to just drop everything. I'm going to dress how I want to dress. I'm going to use my voice in the way that is very authentic and based on my experience, because my voice is based on my experience. I lived it. I am responsible for how I articulate that and how I share that. I am in no way responsible for how others receive that. I'm not. I am responsible for telling my truth. And yeah, so, earlier this year, I launched the Glassford Group, stayed in the real estate and, store development and food and beverage industry, thinking, well, God, I've done that for the last 25 years. That's just what I should do. But at the same time, I had unlocked myself and I started using my voice.
Yeah.
It is, because one was fighting the other.
Yeah.
Right? And it wasn't until that friction happened that I realized, well, wait a minute. I need to focus on my voice. I mean, look how it's resonating. So this is what happened. Really short version. So I launched the business. It was going well. Went to all the conferences, Whistler, Vegas, made sure I did all the dinners, cultivated my relationships, but always was faced with how women are treated, and I was still uncomfortable. So my daughter was moving to London, England for good, with a massive visa. And so she was going. So I was going with her, as well as doing business over there in London. I was sitting in a hotel room, a bed and breakfast, actually. All of this was coming over me. And I thought, Lisa LaFlemme had just been let go. We had the prime minister, in Finland, Sarah, what happened to her? And it brought up an incident that had happened to me in my early 50s with my husband, who's significantly younger than I am, when I decided to let my hair go this color, because when I was, it's normally black, but now it's gray. Right.
It's a beautiful color.
Thank you. But so I put my voice out there and my opinions on LinkedIn. I did a post, and I took my phone and I threw it on the bed, and I went to meet my daughter. And I
Yeah.
came back in the room a couple hours later, maybe 4 or 5 hours later, and my phone was lit up and your home screen. And I thought, oh, for God's sake, did I make a really bad spelling mistake? Did
What
I
did you
F-bomb?
unleash?
What did I do? But here's the thing, right? You immediately think you did something wrong.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
like, what did I do
Uh-oh.
wrong? What
Mhm.
happened? How did I? And so I opened it up, and I mean, fast forward to today, it's got almost 130,000 engagements. It's got
Wow.
incredible. The stories, though, like aside from it going viral, the stories that flooded my inbox, not just the comments, but my inbox, like broke my heart. And it made me realize, Patricia, that I need to use my voice even more. And it's going to resonate with some people. It's going to piss off other people. It's going to encourage, but it's truth. And the more women I talk to, uh, the more they're telling me that it resonates. So I'm
Mhm.
stepping in. I'm just going to step in more to it.
So actually what you are doing is allowing other women, like with that particular post, in fact, of removing their mask. It's almost like there's a mask on LinkedIn as well. There's certain
Oh,
things that you can share your voice, but there's
yeah.
always that little bit of protection that we have behind that mask. But then
Oh,
when
yeah.
that went viral, you noticed all those other women just taking off their masks and just, well, not necessarily agreeing, but a really good debate and
Sharing.
talking about these issues,
Yes.
right?
Yes. I mean, I just got a call the other day of another woman I hugely admire, 55, gone. Right? I mean, it's the silencing that's happening around the world in women in general, and the continued patriarchy. And again, listen, I have a feminist as a husband and a son. This is not about, bashing men.
No.
It is about my lived experience in how we and I have been treated in the world, in the workplace, corporately, the performative things that have just went on, and they're just representation for representation's sake. There's a lot of
Oh, yeah.
unwritten rules,
Yeah.
right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of unwritten rules that I fought to have a seat at the table. And then when I got there, I fought for other women. Sidebar, I think those women that actually make it to the VP and executive VP and, managing partner and C-level, those women that are not finding in their role the time to actually use this to uplift other women, I, I have a huge problem there. I believe we
Mhm.
have a responsibility. We
Mhm.
have a responsibility to make that happen. So
Mhm.
for me,
Yeah.
when I asked that question, it was actually asked of me, Patricia. Somebody said, well, okay, now you're not this and you're not this and you're not this, LA. Who are you
Who
when
are you?
when you're not being who others expect you to be? And my secret was always, I didn't get educated like everybody else. I didn't go to the Ivy School, therefore I'm not worthy. Um, Everybody says that I'm too energetic and I'm too, you know, I'm too, I don't act my age. Um, and you know what? I kept that bottled up inside because it didn't fit. And then I realized, I'm going to try so hard not to curse on this, but I realized that's exactly who I needed to be, was just myself. When I'm
Yeah.
myself, I don't have to worry about what I say or who I am on this podcast. I don't have to, script myself or run through, can I say this? Who's going to be offended? Who's not going to be
Yes.
offended? I no longer have a fear of saying the wrong thing. That to me has been magical. It has lifted a physical weight off my being,
Mhm.
and it has allowed me to look inward at my mental health, my physical health, um, how I can be involved in the community, and how I can, just push a little. But you
Yeah.
just said, we always have to protect ourselves, whether it's a mask or even on LinkedIn. The fact that, I have to call out when I'm talking about the patriarchy, which all my male friends are like, yeah, absolutely, there's patriarchy. Like,
Mhm.
but the fact that I have to actually call out not all men, really? Like
Yeah.
it's not about, taking
Yeah.
one gender and saying this is a bad gender and this is a good. It's not. It's just about working together. I mean, the McKinsey report just came out, right? The 2022 McKinsey report just came out about women in the workplace, right? And it talked about, I just did a post about this the other day, and it talked about that first initial promotion from initial into the industry to that first manager promotion. Right there, women are already at a disadvantage, like something like 87% of women to 100 men. And if you're, God forbid, if you're a woman of color, it even goes down farther to 80 or 82%. But here's the thing. The reason why that matters more than anything in corporate is because that first promotion actually is the fire to all other promotions. So if already,
yes, the gateway,
right? So if,
right?
it's the gateway. So if already women get there and there's not a lot of them, and the pool is representative by not a lot of women, then that next promotion is even less women, and so on and so forth. And also, I would say that the moment that happens, I believe in corporate, my lived experience, that in many cases, confidence is mistook as competence. So that first promotion, right? That first promotion, really important. So, the farther up you get, it's like, well, he's been here for 10 years or he's been here for 20 years, let's give him the next promotion because, he deserves it. It's like that ingrained, he earns it. He's paid his dues.
Like
but
tenure.
Guess what? Right. But what about the growth that was necessary? What about talking to their teams? Right. And so all of a sudden you have corporations being led by not, there's a lot of perspective at the table. There's just, when it all looks the same, except for a smattering of color or gender differences here and there, you're just not getting the perspective. So
seats at the table, not only the seats at the table, but I think the other point that you made is that the voice has to be there. The seat it's important, but being able to have a voice at the table is our next elevation of where we need to go in the workplace for women leadership, right? So
absolutely.
I can hear your passion here. I can hear your passion, and it reflects so much about what I write about equity and about women's leadership in my blog, which I will introduce at the end of the call. But I'd like you to introduce more about your program of Unlocking Her. Like this is your program, and how that came about. I believe a bit of it was through the progression of this big awakening that you had, and about the retreat at Nusara.
Yeah, sure.
Like a little bit about that.
Okay, so I'm in London. Let's flash back to London. It's middle of August. I'm sitting on that bed after the LinkedIn and everything, and I'm just reeling from the stories. And I'm just like reeling, like emotionally, everything.
I'm just laughing at the situation of being in a bed and breakfast and having all this come at you, right?
I was just, and anyway, the people of Buckinghamshire are just like so beautiful. It was a wonderful place to be. But again, when you are in creativity and nature, it will all come. It just does. It gets a light gets shone on it. So the word unlocking came to me because I'm like, what is it? What am I feeling? And so it just came to me, unlocking her. In that moment, within the next 18 hours, I move very quickly on things that are important. I spend too much time on the little things that should just go, but on the bigger things and the big life decisions, I move very quickly. It's intuitive. And so I thought of unlocking. I went, bought the domain, and then I reached out. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing right now, but I'm going to do something. And then I went on Instagram and I username searched. It's available. I took it. I didn't know what I was going to do with these things, Patricia, but I just followed all the yeses that were coming to me, right? Again, I'm following my voice. So backtrack to May. Why am I following my voice? I had an epiphany in May of this year that I was on the phone with a business coach of mine. And I said, I just need help. I need help at staying consistent and staying on this path. Fast forward, 2 weeks later, I flew to Nusara, Costa Rica. I was very uncomfortable. I'm used to planning the trips, having the agenda, the car service, the hotel, everything. I got off. I didn't know what the agenda was going to be. I knew I was going to work on myself. All these women were going to surround me. They were all going to help me. I knew I was told I was going to get uncomfortable. It was going to be emotional. I would have to do physical work. 2 weeks prior to going, when I had made the decision, they said, listen, if you're going to come down, it's probably a good idea that you do 2 things in preparation. Stop all alcohol and stop all refined sugar. And I'm like, ha, I can do anything. Sure, no problem. The alcohol was fine, but the refined sugar, I'm like, what do you mean my milk has 21% sugar in it? Like everything had sugar in it. So, I had to go on a self discovery there. My first grocery shop was about 2 hours. But I got down there and I just handed my whole soul over to these women. And I had sought and failed coaching and guidance from women for several years before I found these women. So without going into too much of my Nasara trip, the woman that got off the plane in Toronto a few weeks later is the woman that you see today. You don't know the woman that hopped on the plane to Nasara because she was covered in masks and layers of clothing, and her organs weren't as healthy and her mind wasn't as clear. You're getting all of that. And so when I sat in that place in London and thought of unlocking her, it all came to me. I thought there's got to be women out there who, like me, want to make the change, want to do the uncomfortable work. But where do they start? Do they Google who's a good coach? Do they go to Bali because that's the latest yoga retreat? Do they go to Napa Valley with the girlfriends? Do they go to Canyon Ranch and go to a spa? So I thought, I have a responsibility right here, just like I did at the table. I have a responsibility to make sure that I share with women what was shared with me. So I called all the coaches. Again, this is in an 18-hour period. I called all the coaches. They all said yes immediately. I reached out to the owners of these 2 beautiful homes that were private in a gated community, reached out to a chef, and everybody was just, yes, yes, yes. How can we help? And I'm like, well, how much do you like? It was just, it was crazy. And I was also spending a lot of money on houses and coaches, everything else, that I just knew it was the right thing to do. And so you asked me to bring you how I got to the retreat. So this is how I decided, okay, I've got the houses, I've got the coaches, I got 10 rooms. I'm going to curate it so they can feel safe. It's got to be a safe space. A safe space. To think that if you had asked me 6 months ago that I could stand in front of a mirror and I could love all my folds and scars and droopiness and extra baggage and puffiness here and brown spots here and scars there, I would have said, you're crazy. And yet today, I can do all of that because of the work I put in, guided by the coaches. So what I say is, like, my retreat, which is part of Unlocking Her, it's also a blog, it's speaking engagements, it's coaching, it's sharing of voices. But right now, our retreat is from November 26th to November 30th. We still have spaces left. I'll give you the website at the end of this podcast if anybody wants to join us. I think there's 5 spaces left. But for me, it was, at the end of the day, what can I give these women with these coaches as the curator and as the one that experienced it? What can I give these women in literally like 4 nights? Is that even possible?
Wow. 4 nights.
What's possible? We can't change lives, but we also can. Like, to me, I know we can. So, the old fashioned toolboxes where you open the lid, or maybe it's not old fashioned actually, and you've got the first tray, and then you've got the bigger tray underneath. So what I think is a pretty good analogy is that I'm giving you that first tray, the right hammer, the right wrench, right? The right one, the one that's, good in your hand. It's not going to fall apart. You're going to have it for the rest of your life. Those are the tools that we've curated with these coaches to allow you to lift it up and go deeper.
So that's coming up fairly quickly. So at the end of our call, you will give some more information about that.
Sure. Yeah.
And I can hear, I can feel your passion. And yes, that self-regard, it's about really loving who you are at this point, which I
Well,
think
but it sounds so
we're working
easy,
on it, right?
Patricia.
We're working on it, but it's still a narrative. It's not, it's still something that we have to pull into our lives as we reach these crossroads. And I suggest to women that don't wait for those last couple of years before those crossroads. Start looking at it like when you are in your career, like what's going to be next for you when you drop that mask, that corporate mask, whatever. So
Right.
this is a good segue into a segment of this session or this show about Executive Encore, and that is every moment matters. Okay, so LA, could you please share a pivotal moment when you recognized what fulfillment looked like for you? And at that time, let the audience know how they can reach you and learn more about your retreat and the services that you provide.
Sure. So I'm going to go to actually, and you know, I don't know who's watching, but this was not scripted. And the fact that you just said every moment matters. So here's how I'm going to twist that around and tie into when my moment was. It was the moment I realized that actually nothing matters. It
Oh,
just doesn't.
okay.
It no, it really was. It was the moment that I'm like, it doesn't matter what I look like. It doesn't matter how I show up. They're going to talk about me anyway. It doesn't matter, you know, what I say. They have their own opinions anyway, based on their lived experience. I
Mm-hmm.
can't let it matter anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the pivotal moment was, you know, I started using my voice, and it was a gradual moment over a period of weeks where my voice started to resonate, and women started to share their stories with me, and my circle has just went like this, and that's what's happened. It was my realization that none of it matters. All
Mm-hmm.
that matters is you. And yet we are
Mm-hmm.
so taught at such a young age to serve others first. Oh, isn't she great? Look, she's helping us do that. Or I need someone to head up the diversity ERG. Oh, you know what? Can you do that? Not getting paid for, but can you help us? Can
Mm-hmm.
can you rally the troops and like it's all about serving others. And how do we look when we're doing it? How do we act when we do it? You know, be careful you don't be too loud. And so for
Yes. Yes.
me, realizing that none of that matters and it's actually none of my business, that just went, psh, my secret sauce is my authenticity,
Yeah.
which I kept hidden under layers and layers of
Yeah.
who I thought I needed to be valued, to be paid well, all of it.
It's also a lot of energy to keep inside as well, and
Oh, it's
a lot of
exhausting.
energy management. Yes, exhausting. That's the right word for it. I want to acknowledge your passion first of all, and just your energy around it. Because one
Mm.
of the things that we were also told, and I think you were probably told this. You mentioned it earlier, is about be a nice little girl and
Yes.
behave yourself. Don't be too exuberant, you
Right.
know, and you know, watch your P's and Q's, all those messages. So it's wonderful that when we come to those crossroads, we have those realizations that we don't have to live within that box anymore. We
No,
can
no.
we can, if we want to be energetic, or if we want to, for some of us, we want to be the introvert. It doesn't mean that we're going to be a hermit. It just means that this is how we're using our energy to really be fulfilled in our life. So I
Patricia,
want to,
when
yes,
we step into our power, when we figure out who we are and who we're supposed to be, and we just step into it, that's why everybody's so afraid of the rising of women.
oh, of
Because when
course,
we step into our power,
yeah.
holy, you
Holy,
know, look out. I mean, we're not going anywhere. We're just getting started.
we're
Yeah.
just getting started, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's great to be at that point. And you know, a lot of younger women are looking to us too, like
Yeah.
they feel
We have a
like they're having to
responsibility.
mold themselves, right?
Yeah.
And for us to be able to use our voice and say, you know, we had that experience as well.
Yeah.
Some things matter, some things don't matter. So you be who you are, right?
Yep.
So I'd like to Also, well, thank you, Ellie, but I'd also like to thank my audience today. Join me each week as I interview women, amazing women like Ellie, and other thought leaders, men as well, about finding fulfillment and joy after 60. If
Even
you
though
are
I'm 59, I'm not
okay,
60 till I'm not 60 till May, and I can't wait.
okay,
Yeah,
that's
so
great.
listen, my website just launched the other day for Unlocking Her.
Oh,
It's
yes,
unlocking
yes,
it's unlockingher.ca.
good.
So, there you can hear about my story, you can meet the coaches, and you can choose your room and all of that. I'm still the founder and president of the Glassford Group, which is the glassfordgroup.com. I'm still doing that, but I just think that the more we lean into our own worthiness, and drop all of that, there's just nothing that can stop us. So I really appreciate what you're doing with your business and your podcast. And I'm very grateful that you asked me to join you
Oh,
today. So
my
thank you.
pleasure. My pleasure. And so your domain, well, your website is
.ca.
unlockingher.ca.
Yep.
Okay. So
Correct.
everyone remember that. My website is patriciamuir.com. Go there to learn more about Executive Encore. The weekly blog is patriciamuir.com/blog, and subscribe to the weekly newsletter for as long as you would like to subscribe to. Currently, I'm blogging about critical self-care and grounding yourself. So what a great topic to wrap up today. It fits so well with today's conversation about
It
dropping the
does.
mask,
Yeah.
listening to and using your voice.
Yeah. Amazing.
It certainly is.
It just, I also don't want to sound like it's so metaphysical, right? Because it's not. And I don't want to sound like, I'm up here and I've done all this and, it's just, I want to speak to women that were me 6 months ago.
Yeah. Well,
That's what
yeah,
I want to
6
do.
months ago. Yeah.
That's what I want to do. Like 6, 7 months ago, I didn't realize how broken I was. And I just know that using my voice and really speaking up for women and trying to change it from the outside in is really, really important. The conversations that I'm having with the young women, they are pushing me and making me more uncomfortable, and I couldn't be more joyful about it.
Yeah.
I really couldn't, because
Yeah.
they were not raised like I was.
Yeah.
Right? And my generation. I mean, when I started, there was no computers. I remember getting the first computers and this Lotus 123 thing. Like, we had to innovate on the job. And so for me, when I see all the women over 50 that are being let go or restructured out under business reasons and then given an NDA to sign, so they won't tell their story, just so that they can be paid fairly in a severance.
Yeah.
It makes my blood boil. And so for me, I want to change that, right? I want to change that. Like, why don't we have open understanding, what the pay scales are? At one of
Exactly.
my last
I wrote
jobs, I
about that.
saw,
Yeah.
I saw a pay stub. I'm not, at one of my last jobs where my predecessor, more than 6 figures more than me.
Oh, geez. So,
Oh, yeah.
on one last comment before we let our audience know, I'm sure our audience is really interested in learning more. You know what? This is not going to be the one and last time that LA and I get on a live call. Please stay
Great.
tuned. Follow LA on LinkedIn, follow me
Yeah.
on LinkedIn, and you'll see more of our conversations. So I'm going to let you go for today. Again, thank you very much, LA. It's been my
Thank
pleasure.
you.
To our audience, have a great day.
That was amazing. Thanks.